Hey guys, I'm here with my friend Jeff Henderson. Jeff pastors at Gwinnett Church in the Atlanta area. He's been with Northpoint Ministry for a number of years, I think 15 years. And we want to learn from what they're doing at Gwinnett Church and Northpoint Ministries and some of his background. Jeff, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Hey, Greg, man, it's good to see you again. So thanks for letting me be a part of this. I'm honored.
Yeah, we're honored. You guys are just knocking it out of the park. So I mentioned you've been with Northpoint for quite a while, but before that, you actually had a background in marketing. Just give us a brief overview of kind of what you did, what you oversaw, a little bit of your background and experience.
Sure. Well, I'm a preacher's kid, so I've been in church all my life. So I promised myself I would never work at a church. And so never tell yourself you're never going to do something, or God, more importantly. So I told God I would never work at a church. So I've been working at a church for 15 years. So, but my dad told me, hey, I said, Dad, I don't think I want to work at a church. And he said, well, that's cool. Go, full-time ministry isn't church work. Full-time ministry is if you're a believer and you work, congratulations, you're in full-time ministry. So I grew up in the Atlanta area, huge sports fan. And so I just discovered there was this thing called sports marketing. And so I actually wrote the Atlanta Braves a letter and said, can I work for y'all? And as an intern. And then that eventually led to some full-time work. So that's where I started my marketing career, working for the Braves. That's a baseball team here in Atlanta that loses quite a bit. And so, so I just enjoyed marketing. So then eventually landed at a couple of other companies in the Atlanta area, Callaway Gardens and Lake Lanier Islands. And during that time, I actually developed some promotions with Chick-fil-A and developed a good friendship with those folks. Wonderful people. And then they eventually asked me to come on board and work for them. So I worked for them for 6 years. I was over their regional marketing, sports marketing, and beverage marketing. And during that time, Wendy and I were very involved at Northpoint Community Church. And the more we got involved, we discovered that they were about to launch their first multi-site location. And so Northpoint approached me about come on board and helping Buckhead launch. Primarily, I think because of my background with Chick-fil-A and understanding franchise world, this is going to be a franchise, if you will. And so and Chick-fil-A does that really, really well. So long story short, I eventually left Chick-fil-A and I was on the early team at Buckhead Church. And so it's been 15 years. So about 7.5 years into that, the Gwinnett opportunity came about. And I'm from Gwinnett. My wife is from Gwinnett. We both graduated from high school here. My dad pastored a church here. So we just felt like that this would be a cool opportunity to give back to a community that we love. So we left Buckhead about 7.5 years ago and have been doing Gwinnett Church since then.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I grew up in the Southeast, so I'm a lifelong Braves fan. And we've had better years, and they're rebuilding. They're rebuilding.
That's right. every Atlanta sports team typically rebuilds, so that's what we say. But anyway, we're still optimistic, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned your background at Chick-fil-A. A lot of the people watching this conference, a lot of people I interact with in my Facebook group, love Chick-fil-A. We see it as a company that just excels in excellence and customer service and hospitality, and they've just created a great culture. And so I think with your experience with 15 years at Northpoint Ministries, which is just a leader in the Big C church when it comes to welcoming newcomers and being hospitable and guest services, and then your background with Chick-fil-A and the culture you got to see up close there, there's a lot that you can share with our audience. And so we were talking through some of the stuff that we could talk about today, but I got to hear you speak at a conference last fall, and you gave a presentation that I thought would be good to kind of tap into some of the key themes, some of the key points for our audience. You mentioned leaders are repeaters. Give us some insight into that.
Sure. One of the questions I'm asked, Greg, is based on the fact that I worked at Chick-fil-A and then work at Northpoint. Those are two organizations that have really done really, really well. And the questions I'm asked is, what are the main differences between Chick-fil-A and Northpoint? And that's a good question. I think the better question is, what are the similarities? Because there are actually more similarities between thriving organizations than there are differences. And in fact, the biggest difference is I work on Sundays now. Before I was closed on Sundays at Chick-fil-A, but now Sunday's a work day for me. So So there are some thriving things there. But one of the things that I think that both Northpoint and one of the many things that they have in common is that everybody around, you could go down the hall right now. I'm at Gwinnett Church right now. But if you were to go down to a Chick-fil-A or the Chick-fil-A headquarters and just knocked on the door and said, hey, could you tell me the mission real quick? I think 100% of the people could tell you the mission. And for me, I've been gone 15 years, but I can still tell you the mission, which is to have a positive influence for all who come in contact for Chick-fil-A and to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us. At Northpoint, our mission is to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus, and our vision is to create a church unchurched people love to attend. And so the reason that sticks is because I think it's a compelling mission and vision, but I think it's because leaders are repeaters and they stay on message and they say it over and over and over again. And so as leaders, I think we can sometimes think, oh, I'm not that good of a communicator because I said this once and people aren't connecting with it. Hey, you could be a fantastic communicator, but you just got to stay on message and say it over and over and over again. And so the example that you and I were talking about before we began was the whole idea that when people come into Chick-fil-A and a customer says, thank you, they don't say you're welcome. They say my pleasure. Well, I know where that came from. It actually came from Truett Cathy, the late founder of Chick-fil-A, huge hero and friend of mine, and loved Truett and his wife Jeanette. And so Truett got up at the convention. I was still working at Chick-fil-A at the time and said, hey, I was at the Ritz-Carlton recently. I said, thank you to their staff. And they didn't say you're welcome. They said, my pleasure. He said, I really like that. We ought to do that. And it doesn't cost us anything. So from now on, let's have our team members say, my pleasure. So comes back from the convention, gets in his car, goes to a restaurant, orders a chicken sandwich that he created, by the way. And he says, thank you. And the team member says, you're welcome. So this goes on for a while. Well, Truett doesn't get mad. He doesn't fire off emails. He doesn't, fire anybody. He just stays on message, and he says it over and over and over again. Gets up next year at the convention, says it again. And I think, in my humble estimation, it really took 4 or 5 years for this really to stick. So every time I'm in a Chick-fil-A, which is rather frequently, and I say thank you, and the team member says my pleasure, I know where that comes from. Mm-hmm. And it's very convicting to me to say, okay, Jeff, how have you stayed on mission and vision? And how frequently are you repeating the mission and vision? And so the question we ask around here is, what did I do today to be for Gwinnett? What did I do today? What have I done for Gwinnett today? The operative word being today, because mission and vision leak. And I'm all for vision casting events. I think those are wonderful. But if you go, hey, we had this event 3 months ago, now let's move on to the next thing. That's not how mission and vision work. For thriving organizations, you've got to have a compelling mission and vision. But at the end of the day, once you have that, you can't file it away in a desk drawer somewhere and just think that it's going to automatically happen. You got to say it over and over and over again. And so that's one of the things they've done. And as a result of that, it sticks into the hearts. And once you stick into the mission and vision into the hearts, then it goes into the hands and the feet of people, and they can activate it.
I love it. It's so encouraging and inspiring to hear, and it blesses me. I hope it blesses others that, I can go to Chick-fil-A here in my own. We're in South Charlotte, a suburb, and actually right over the border in South Carolina. And I can go to my local Chick-fil-A, like I have so many times, order something, and a 16-year-old girl says, my pleasure. I've been all over the country. I think earlier this year I saw a Chick-fil-A next to an In-N-Out in California. I can go all over the country, say thank you, and I'm going to hear my pleasure. And there's just so much into that. There's so much that could be revealed from that, of the stick-to-itiveness, the reiterating over and over and over again. I've heard Andy Stanley say for years, vision leaks, and that we have to constantly communicate not only the vision, but the why and the what. And so that's just
absolutely incredible. And the other thing we have to do, Greg, is we have to make sure that we don't have too many messages, and we have to edit to amplify the message. And so what happens is this happens in church world because you have different ministries communicating different things. And what happens is those messages can start competing with one another. So for us, the For Gwinnett messaging puts all of that under one umbrella. And then we can have, obviously we have different goals for different ministry environments and all that, and that can be communicated, but they're all under the umbrella of we are for this community and we're for Gwinnett. And so the other thing I would encourage our participants here that are watching us is to take a message inventory and look at the messages that you are sending out and how can you edit it down so that there's one overarching message that is being communicated. Because if not, your messages actually end up competing with one another, and that's called fragmented marketing. And that's true in church world, it's true in business world. And so make sure that you've got one, you can only say a few things. It's like a bucket of water. If you've got too much in the bucket, the water's going to spill out and it's going to fall. So try to be able to hand only enough that somebody can take it themselves and carry it without spilling any of the water or the vision.
That's good. That's good. Bucket of water. I like that. You've said before, compelling. I've worked for churches where, actually one church in particular that I'm thinking of, where we really, as staff members, didn't know the vision. And I remember asking a staff member one time, I eventually asked the lead pastor, but I asked the staff member, I said, do you know what our vision is? And he said, no, I actually don't. And so then I mentioned that to the lead pastor. It had just never been communicated. We weren't vision driven. It was just kind of just going through the motions. We had an internal mission of worship, grow, serve, where we kind of, we move people through a process, but we didn't as a church, we didn't have something externally focused, like a For Gwinnett type vision. And I think there's something powerful about the word compelling, whether you be in sports marketing or Chick-fil-A or a church, giving some people something compelling to be a part of. We all want to be significant, to be a part of something significant. And so that's huge. You have this thing that we talk about the gap and shrinking the gap. Tell us about that.
Well, it goes to trying to create a church that unchurched people love. And the mission for us, when people come here at Gwinnett Church, we want them to grow in their relationship with Jesus. And so we have a strategy for all that. But we can't just stay there. We also have to have an outward focused approach. And that is the vision piece of trying to create a church that unchurched people love. But I had an artist create a picture in the early days of our church of a guy sitting on a couch with his back turned to the church. And he wasn't protesting the church. He didn't hate the church. The church just wasn't a category for him. And it's much like, if I can use another Chick-fil-A example, when in the early days of rolling out breakfast at Chick-fil-A, the idea of people eating fried chicken for breakfast and a biscuit, right? We think it's a no-brainer, but for many people still, there's a lot of people that have never done that before. And the breakfast category is the hardest category to enter into, because typically people eat the same thing for breakfast every day. Lunch and dinner is different, but breakfast is typically the same thing. So in essence, you had a guy on the couch and a chicken biscuit going, chicken for breakfast? I don't eat chicken for breakfast. I'm not part of the category. So what Chick-fil-A had to do is, how do we connect with this man, this woman, this family to have them actually consider chicken for breakfast? Well, in a very real way, in a very comparative sense, it's the same thing for a guy or a gal or a family or a teenager that just church isn't a category. So we have to shrink the gap between the gal on the couch and the church. And the way we do that is to get him to turn around and just have an opportunity, a dialogue to engage with us. And so the way you do that is you have to create common ground with him or her or them. And one of the ways you do that is you find out what they're for, what they're interested in. And so we decided for us, one of the common grounds that we have is, by the way, we actually live in this community. We go to school here as well. My kids go to school here. We go to the restaurants. We go to the ballparks. We're for this community. And so when we started going at church, our team, somebody had this statement that, hey, many people are more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. We should be known for what we're for. And that's where For Gwinnett was really born. It was tied into this heartbeat that we want to create a church that the guy on the couch, an unchurched guy, unchurched lady, unchurched family, they can actually turn around and create some common ground with us. So instead of kind of building a dividing line, we want to say, hey, we can talk about Jesus and the church and all that, but before we get there, we have a lot more in common with you than you actually think. And when we do that, then when we create common ground, we create conversations and dialogue. So an example of that, Greg, when we bought the property where I'm at right now, the city that we're in said, hey, y'all could put up a sign that says Gwinnett Church coming soon. And from my perspective, I didn't want to do that, at least not from the very beginning. I wanted my introduction to be common ground language. And so we just put up a sign that said #4Gwinnett. That's it. It didn't say the church website, didn't say John 3:16, didn't have a fish on it. It just said for Gwinnett. And I got some questions like, well, how are they going to know it's what it is? How are they going to know it's a church? And my perspective was, exactly. They're not going to know. But what we're going to do is we're going to create some conversation and dialogue and begin to create some common ground. So then we created t-shirts, and this was just in the early days. We didn't have that many volunteers, and just said, go wear these 4 Gwinnett t-shirts into the grocery stores and into the restaurants and into the ballparks and the fields and churches or rather schools rather. And then I bet you're going to create some conversations. And that's exactly what happened. People went into the grocery store and said, 4 Gwinnett. There's a sign up there that says 4 Gwinnett. What is that? And then this goes back to the bucket analogy. We had to give our volunteers language that is portable that they could communicate in the grocery store, in the ballparks. And so I got so many stories, Greg, of that happening. And they would say, well, it's actually a church. And then the other person would say, why does it say 4 Gwinnett? And then they would say, well, for many people, they're more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. We want to be known for what we're for because we're for you. But more importantly, so is God. Well, in that moment, that's vision casting from a t-shirt and a sign. And I'm not making this up. This isn't some preacher's story. But yesterday, we had church. We baptized a guy who said, 2 years ago, I drove by this property and saw a sign that said #4Gwinnett. My family and I weren't going to church there, but I got home and I told my wife, I think I want to go to that church when they open up. Well, that was the guy on the couch. That was exactly why we wanted to do this. That's him. And so it goes back to creating common ground, and that common ground creates conversations. And here's the beautiful thing about this, Greg. We don't have to get a bullhorn out and yell at people and tell them they're going to hell. We can actually put the bullhorn down and just actually be real people and leverage the common ground that we have with them. And that as we do, they actually end up asking us the questions. And when they end up asking us the questions, then we begin to have a conversation based on common ground, which ultimately creates community. And when the guy or family or lady on the couch realizes she has something in common with us and that she can have a conversation with us and we're not weird people and we actually have lives and real issues and problems like anybody else, and that they can be a part of a community and they can belong before they believe, which is what the disciples did, by the way, it just creates a healthy conversation with the community. And so from our perspective, that's what Shrink the Gap is that moment when the guy, like yesterday, his name was Joshua, he turned around and said, that's the church I want to go to. I don't know what it is. I don't know even when they're going to open up. I don't even know what's going to be, but he actually had to go figure out what is this #4Gwinnett, and he searched it on Google. So it's the classic story of trying to create some common ground. But so that's where that whole Shrink the Gap thing, we've got a gap between unchurched and the church. And our challenge is to shrink that gap and create some common ground with them.
I love it. And you have some specific ways that you do that. When I heard you speak last fall, you gave some examples that I thought would be relevant to share with this conference. Most of our attendees are lead pastors. They may be the only person on staff. They may be part-time, bivocational, volunteer. There's a lot of volunteer leaders watching this, whether they do first impressions, guest services, communications, social media. But you have you have some, I guess you could say, tactics or strategies or things that are working that you shared that I think are pretty insightful. And so let's start with one that really jumped out at me because I've seen it all over Charlotte. I live here in Charlotte, which is in the shadow of Elevation Church. And everywhere I go, I see Elevation T-shirts. I can be in the bank. I was in the bank recently, and there was a woman standing in line that had an Elevation shirt on. I've been in restaurants, and I've seen people with an Elevation hoodie or hat or T-shirt on. You had a slide at this talk that I heard you do. It just simply said T-shirts, T-shirts, T-shirts. Tell us a little bit about that. Give us the what does that mean to you, and how do you guys live that out at Gwinnett Church?
Well, I go back to Chick-fil-A, and one of the things they taught me was to be the brand. And so you personally be the brand. And the more vision carriers you can create, the more vision casters that you have. And people love going out in the community wearing T-shirts. And so we thought, let's leverage that, and let's partner with people. And because people would say, hey, I'm uncomfortable handing somebody a Bible tract. And I said, what if we can coach you on the conversation? But what if you don't have to say anything to anyone unless they say something to you? But you got to wear a For Gwinnett shirt. And so that's part of that whole process of, hey, we want you to embody the brand and be the brand. And people, when you do that, the other thing, Greg, is that people buy into the mission and vision more when they actually wear it. So, but I'll say this, I go back, here's something that we learned. Here's a mistake that we made and I think we're still trying to do a better job at this, because I'm it sounds like I'm sharing all of our success stories. Let me tell you one mistake that we had early on. So we were set up tear down church, and many of you were watching this, you're set up tear down, and God bless you. Those were some tough days for us. But we would go to dinner as a staff afterwards to basically say, we did it. We pulled off another Sunday. It's let's rest up, and here comes another one. So I went to this restaurant, and we had different ministries with different T-shirts. And I walked into the restaurant. I saw many of our volunteers there, which was great. But then I pretended to be the guy on the couch that didn't know that any of these people were connected. And that's when I realized, even though all these people are connected, because they're wearing different T-shirts and because they're wearing different messages, I wouldn't know that all of them are connected together. What if we could have them all with one message, the For Gwinnett message? And some of them said, we're For Gwinnett, but small. And I said, no. Because we gave For Gwinnett shirts to everybody, but the ministry environments had their own ministry brands to it. So I called our leadership team together the next day, and I said, we're not going to do that anymore. The message is For Gwinnett. And I want to be able to go into a restaurant and know that all of these people are connected under one unifying message. And because the reason this is important, we want people to bump into it and go, For Gwinnett, I see it all over the place. What is it? The reason we want them to say, I see it all over the place, is because it then leads them to ask the question, what is it? That's what we're doing. We're not just trying to spread a message and a marketing slogan. That's not what this is about. This is tied directly to trying to reach people who don't know Jesus, to bring them in, to understand who Jesus is, and for them to ask the question, what is this for thing all about? So T-shirts are a part of it. The other thing that's been really effective for us are the car decals, the car magnets that say For Gwinnett. And again, for us, this is just our perspective. It doesn't have the church website on it. It doesn't have the church logo on it. It's just For Gwinnett. We just want that message out there. But what we have instructed our church to do is every now and then, as frequently as they possibly can, is to pay it backwards. And what I mean by that is for them to go through a drive-through line and pay for the car behind them. And so somebody's sitting behind them, they see the For Gwinnett message, they get up to the counter, and the lady in the counter, the guy on the counter says, oh, good news, the person in front of you paid for your meal. Well, that's just a small deposit, but I'm telling you, we've heard, again, so many stories of that happening and how God does that. And the rest is the God factor, how God does what he does to take those interactions. We let God handle that. That's where we say, Holy Spirit, you do what you want to do, but we're going to be faithful to be generous people in our community. And So we've heard story after story after story of people being able to interact with waiters and waitresses and people in the ballparks and community and grocery stores. And it's a non-invasive, non-threatening message. But the great news is ultimately this message is God's for you. That's ultimately where we land. And for some people that may be offensive, but we've yet to get the email from the person that says, I'm really offended because God told me that that God is for me. We've yet to get that email. Maybe it's coming. I don't know. But it's such a fantastic message that I think has been communicated so poorly over the years.
I love it. You guys were probably the first church that I heard of doing the pay it backwards thing. And I was living in the middle of the country. This was before I moved back to the Southeast, and I heard about it. Friends, peers talking about it, seeing it on Facebook. And, here in Charlotte, you can see elevation stuff all over cars, whether it be the word elevation or just the little triangle, just the logo. That's all over the back of cars. Transformation Church here in Charlotte with Derwin Gray, they have TC stickers all over. I've been to Phoenix with Christ Church of the Valley. They have the CCV stickers, and you cannot live in the Phoenix area and not have seen a CCV sticker somewhere. They've just taken over that city. And so I've heard about Gwinnett Church and the pay it backwards. My own personal story is twice I've had it happen to me from somebody with Elevation Church, where I was once going through Starbucks, and I got to the window. They said, the car in front of you took care of it. And I look up and there's an Elevation sticker driving away. And I got like goosebumps. I was like, this is incredible. Yeah. And then one day I had ordered a full meal at Chickfila, and I got to the window and somebody had paid for it. And I see a Elevation sticker driving away, and I go home. Now I'm a Christian. I'm a Christ follower. I'm a pastor. And I was blown away. Like, it made my day.
Yeah.
Imagine somebody unchurched or far from God. But I came home and I told my wife, you will not believe this. The car in front of me paid for my meal. Like, it just made my day. It blew me away. And so, wherever you're living, to have somebody pay it backwards and to see Fort Gwinnett driving away, there's got to be just story after story after story. And so I love the example you guys are setting and how God's used that all over the country. Another thing that you talked about at the conference that I think would be important for people to hear, because you mentioned megaphone earlier, and a lot of times we miss this in our communication. You talk about being social on social media. Tell us your thoughts there.
Well, if you look at most church social media platforms right now, let's take any church, maybe your church, go to the Instagram page after we're done, or open up another screen and do it. Typically 99.9999% of the posts are about what's happening inside the four walls of the church. Come here on Sunday, look at this ministry, look at us. And we need to do that. But we need to balance that, because if we're going to be for the community, we got to start talking about the community and engaging with the community. And so one of the things we try to do, and we're trying to get better at this, but for every post that talks about Gwinnett Church, we want to have a post about what's something that's going on in the community, or a person in the community, or a school in the community, because the community is the hero. Jesus is obviously the hero. We're not the hero, but we want to connect people to Jesus, and we want to highlight and celebrate the community. And so be social on social media means two things. First of all, talk about the community, engage with the community. But here's the game changer. When you can go off of your social media platform and onto the social media platform of a local school, a local business, or a local leader or a local person, and comment on their social media platforms, that is a game changer, because it shrinks the gap of your church, particularly if that person does not go to your church. So you can do it on behalf of the church. You can have your team do it. But I would search, for example, the hashtag of your city, like hashtag Charlotte in your case, Greg. And then I would comment on behalf of the church on that person's post. And it's kind of one of those pay it backwards moments on social media. And sometimes people won't say anything, But more often than not, they'll be amazed, they'll like your photo, and then they'll be engaging and watching you. So we need to be more engaging with people on social media than just being a megaphone and just saying, come to here, come to Sunday, come to Sunday, come to Sunday. And we can't forget the word social in social media. So one of the things that we do at the beginning of every staff meeting is we go to #4Gwinnett on Instagram and we like everyone's photos. And I ask the team to comment on a few of them as well. And for us, it's just an opportunity for us to engage on their social media platform. So we're going off of our social media platform, if you will, and engaging on theirs. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because you are able to actually recognize individual people, number one. And especially if you're a rather large church, to do that, it personalizes your mission and vision. But the other thing is you're rewarding the behavior you want repeated because this person helped spread the message that you were wanting to spread, in our case, for Gwinnett. So people have figured out when we have staff meetings because their social media feed starts blowing up because our staff is liking their photos. And so for us, that is a way for us to be social on social media and engage with people versus just have a megaphone that says, come to our events, come to our events, come to our events. We still need to do that. We just need to balance it out some more.
That's good. That's good. Engagement is key. And it sounds simple, but we have to be social on social media. I want to end with just two things. The first one is you've talked about saying yes to those that say no, whether they're saying no to the church or what we believe or even to Jesus, saying yes. And that something powerful happens when people who have said no to church realize that the church is still saying yes to them. Tell us just a little bit of your heart there. Again, a lot of people watching this are pastors. From your pastoral heart, what does it mean for you? Obviously, you have the 4 Gwinnett, but they've heard for so long what we're against. Just share a little insight into when they find out that the church is saying yes to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I've spent a number of years in the restaurant industry, and unfortunately, for the most part, or a good portion, the Christians don't have a great reputation in the restaurant industry for tipping well. Mm-hmm. I remember going to a Christian leadership conference where the leader had to stand up and say, "Hey, we're about to go to lunch in our city. Can y'all tip well?" I so applaud his efforts, but it was heartbreaking that he would even have to say that. And so one of the ways we want to say yes to those who said no is to support local businesses. Whether they come to our church or not doesn't matter. And so when there's a grand opening of a restaurant, I mean, we're on it and we support them. And we want to, because again, we want to be for the community. One of the best ways we can be for the community is have thriving businesses. Thriving businesses help create or part of a thriving community. And so I can tell you a story about a local donut shop not too far from where I am. This couple owns this donut shop. They don't attend here. They don't go here. But our leadership team made it their goal last year to help their business thrive. We did that on social media. We obviously have bought some donuts from them. We encourage people to go to this donut shop. And it really had a significant impact on their business. So they came to me and said, well, what can we do to reciprocate? And I said, the only thing we want you to do is to run a great donut shop. I mean, if you want to come to church here, that would be awesome. We think it'd be amazing. And we think that we could help lead you into a growing relationship with Jesus. But if you don't do that, we're still for you and we're going to still help you sell donuts. And so for us, that's a part of that, is to people who've said, I'm not going to go to church. Okay, we will still say yes to you. There's a local restaurant owner that I have known for a while. She has never been to church here on Sunday, but she owns a pizza business, and I have bought lots of pizzas from her. And just as an attempt to say, hey, God's for you. She's had some tough experiences with Christians in churches. And so she just said no. Well, okay, I understand that. We're still going to say yes to you. We're still going to promote your business. We're still going to buy pizzas from you when we can. And we're still going to ask people to go to your restaurant with 4 Gwinnett shirts to let you know God loves you and so do we.
It's awesome. Awesome. I love, if we just as church leaders shared more stories, giving our people the tools, the resources, equipping them to be ambassadors and, like you said, brain carriers, and then collecting stories, sharing those as a team and with our volunteers and our staff. Look at what God did. But
yeah,
I thought as we close out here, you guys at Gwinnett Church have obviously a guest services team, and you probably have some vision and values. Give us just a little overview of what are the values for guest services at Gwinnett Church?
Sure. We have 3. And again, we want to try to edit a message to amplify the message. So for us, the first one is to deliver wow through service. And what does that mean? Well, we want to deliver service so well that someone goes, wow, that was personal. That was attentive, and that was excellent, with joy and with grace. And so the way we deliver that is we challenge all of our guest service volunteers and our staff every Sunday to wow one person. That's it. Just individually wow one person. Now, if you can wow more than that, that's cool. But when we say wow everybody, that's too daunting. To bring it to one person and go, your goal today is to wow one person, to be on high alert. If someone's coughing, bring them water or a cough drop. You see somebody drinking their coffee mug and they're all done, you go up to them and say, can I get you some more coffee? Remembering names and saying, hey, thanks for being here. We're so glad you're here, Susan. And so all of that, we want people to go, wow. I mean, someone Instagrammed a For Gwinnett Instagram a few weeks ago that said, it was the note from our parking team that said, we noticed your left front tire was low. We filled it up with air, but you might want to get it checked today or tomorrow.
Yeah, I saw that on social media.
Yeah, she Instagrammed that and said, that's why I love this church, or that's what For Gwinnett's being all about. So that's wow through service. So if we can have that one person in mind, what happens is we all walk away collectively wowing lots of people because of our volunteers and our staff. So deliver wow through service is the first one. The second one is to create fun. In other words, we want you to smile. And smiling doesn't cost a lot, but it is priceless. One of the things they taught us at Chick-fil-A is when a customer walks up to the counter, if you will smile at them, the natural human reaction is to smile back. Okay. Well, if you give a person a smile coming to church when they think they're going to get judged and God's against them, and suddenly the first thing they have is a smile, it's just disarming. It's fun. And to create fun, what we do in church work is very serious, but we're just taking ourselves too seriously. I mean, we can have fun. It's okay. I hear these, arguments about church should be serious. Hey, I think church should be reverent, but I think the joy of the Lord is our strength. Not the seriousness of the Lord. The joy of the Lord is our strength. There is joy. So create fun. And then the third one is to leave a lasting impression. And we try to do that by trying to capture and collect names and saying names. Or when people come to the gallery, which is our first time guest experience, our guest services volunteers that walk with them, that when they put on their flashers as drive in as first time guests, we have a first-time team that walks with them through their whole experience. And then before they leave, they write a handwritten note. We believe in saying people's names and handwritten notes. And we're big believers in handwritten notes. Email's great, but what's exciting to me is this week, there will be a lot of people this was their first-time experience this weekend at Gwinnett Church. They'll get a handwritten note from a volunteer in a couple of days. And the thing I love about that isn't just for them. I love it for the volunteer as well. So those are our 3 guest services values.
That's awesome. Well, I know I'm always looking at resources that you're doing with the Rocket Company, and you also have some other things that people can get in touch with you and connect with you. You've got something called forthecommunity.net. Tell us about that and how they can connect with you online.
Well, it's just a website that I can kind of download ideas of what we're trying and what not to try as it relates to For the Community. But so I have blogs and posts, and I posted speaking guest services, posted a video recently about the 3 emotions you want people to experience as guests. along the journey of their experience in your church. And so there's a free ebook for the lead pastors about fundraising, how to shrink the gap between your future vision and your current resources. I've yet to meet the church that says, you know what, I've got all the money I need. I don't think I need any more. And that's actually a good thing, because if you had all the money you need, then your vision's too small. And so we've got just a lot of tools. So this is kind of a resource, a website for me just to kind of download all of these ideas. And the cool thing, Greg, is there are so many churches now doing the For campaign that they're sending me. So it's not just For Gwinnett. They're sending me ideas, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a fantastic idea. So I'm able to share it here on the website.
That's awesome. So everybody check out forthecommunity.net. Jeff, thanks for pouring into our leaders. Thank you for what you're doing and for sharing that with others. We're glad you were part of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. It's great to see you again. Thanks for all you're doing.